Hello everyone, I'm Joseph Bambery, and my partner who will be leading the class discussion is Stephen Tan. Our privacy case study is on the identification of the Golden State Killer using genetic information. So who was the Golden State Killer? The Golden State Killer was a serial killer, rapist, and burglar who committed over 100 crimes between the years 1974 and 1986. He's believed to be responsible for at least 3 different crime sprees in the Southern California area and is known under several different aliases that you can see listed below. It wasn't until just last year that police were able to track down Joseph James DeAngelo as the Golden State Killer when they used DNA evidence and a public genomics website called GEDmatch. GEDmatch is a website that allows its users to upload and compare DNA profiles created by other popular genealogy services that you may have heard of, such as 23andMe and Ancestry DNA. In the case of the Golden State Killer, police were not able to find an exact match of the killer's DNA on the website, so they performed what is known as a familial DNA search to narrow their existing pool of suspects. A familial DNA search is a technique used to extend the search for a specific DNA profile to include potential relatives of a DNA sample. The search works by examining DNA profiles with the same genetic markers on the Y chromosome that are shared by brothers, sons, and fathers to identify a possible relative of the DNA sample. As a result, this type of search only works for identifying men. Currently, genetic data from relatives as far removed as third cousins can be used to identify individuals. Once scientists identify a likely relative, investigators search another database of records to determine who in that person's family was at the right age and in the right place to have committed the crime. After the police ran their search in the Golden State Killer case, they were led to DeAngelo, and after receiving a warrant for a sample of his DNA, were able to confirm that he was the killer. So in this case, Joseph James DeAngelo never provided his DNA. Yet because he had a relative that provided DNA to GEDmatch, law enforcement were able to identify his relative and search his family tree to find him. Although familial DNA searches can be useful in solving gruesome crimes such as this one, they can also be seen as unethical and, in their current state, are somewhat unregulated. For example, in the case of the Golden State Killer, before identifying DeAngelo as the killer, investigators first used their search findings to persuade a judge to authorize a warrant for DNA testing against a 73-year-old man in an Oregon nursing home. The man, who was in poor health, was not a match for the serial killer's sample. Should this be considered a violation of his privacy? In a similar court case about genetic privacy, Maryland v. King, Justice Antonin Scalia argued in a dissent that such searches would violate the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches. Currently, state and federal lawmakers have broad discretion when crafting laws to regulate DNA searches, if they choose to exercise it. But currently, Maryland is the only state that has banned familial searches out of fears that they would be applied in a racially disproportionate manner. Familial DNA searches aren't the only thing to be concerned about when thinking about genetic data privacy. Your DNA contains highly sensitive information about your health and identity. Everything from your ancestry to your risk of cancer is often included in a genetic test report. This information, in the wrong hands, could be used to discriminate against you. For example, if someone was at more risk of cancer based on their genetic report, insurance companies that could see that report could view that as a liability and raise rates for the individual. Another concern is the use of your genetic data by these popular genomics websites. Currently, Ancestry DNA and 23andMe are already selling user data to companies and universities for genetic research. In order to protect their genetic data, users have to manually opt out of this practice. Several experts in the field of bioethics say that activities such as this should be more regulated and are calling for the protection of genetic data under general privacy law, rather than treating it as something separate. So, on that note, before we open it up for discussion, I'll leave you with some of the following questions. Is it a violation of the Fourth Amendment for police to use familial DNA searches to find possible suspects for a crime? Is it a violation of privacy? Should there be more regulation on the use of genetic data? And should genetic data be protected under existing privacy laws, or should it be considered something separate? Thank you all for your time. I look forward to hearing your responses, and now I'll turn it over to Stephen to facilitate the class discussion.